Hey everybody, my name is Rob Prince. I teach documentary filmmaking at the University of Alaska Fairbanks. I'm going to be driving this 1982 DeLorean 3,700 miles back to my home in Fairbanks, Alaska in June of 2017. I'm going to be starting up an Indiegogo campaign here in a few weeks, and I thought before we do that, maybe you'd like to see what driving a DeLorean looks like from my perspective. So we've got Google Glass going here. Hopefully it won't freak out on me too much. It's one of the reasons why it's now defunct, but it does have a very cool sort of first person perspective that I'm hoping you might enjoy. I'm going to try not moving my head too much. That'll make you sick. But let's go for a quick ride. First time I drove a DeLorean, it did feel pretty claustrophobic. Now I've had this one about 4 months now, and actually feels fine. Visibility feels really good, but it does take a little getting used to. Oh, that unfortunately is typical. Come on, baby. Wants to start. There we go. Should I edit that out? It's honest. Okay, reverse is odd. It's up and back on the DeLorean. The starting issue, by the way, is a known problem that has to do with the fuse for the fuel pump. So I know what's going on there. It's not a big deal. I will probably get it sorted out before I head up to Fairbanks. You might already know this, but the acceleration on the DeLorean is not exactly something it's famous for. I'm not really flooring it, but we're at 45, 50, 55, now we're at 60. Originally, acceleration on the DeLorean 0 to 60 was about just under 9 seconds. I think after 35 years, this one is maybe still a little bit slower than that. So the acceleration, the pickup is not necessarily one of the fun elements of driving the DeLorean. However, it is a lot of fun in the corners. We're going to go up here a little bit and I'll show you what that's like. Because it's so low and wide and has very firm suspension, it's a lot of fun taking the corners. However, because it is rear engine, that does make me a little nervous. I've already met one DeLorean owner who totaled his DeLorean taking a corner a little too fast and spun it out and went backwards into a guardrail. So that part makes me a little bit nervous. What particularly makes me nervous is he told me it didn't give him any warning before it let go. So I've pushed it a little bit in the corners, but not too much, because I really don't want my DeLorean story to be that I owned one for 4 months and then totaled it taking a corner too fast. This is a 5-speed manual transmission, and while it does take a little while to get up to speed, it certainly can go fast eventually. One of the funny things about DeLoreans, though, especially for fans of the movie, is that the speedometer, which is going to be hard for you to see, originally doesn't even go up to 88 miles per hour. Maxes out at 85 because the National Transportation Bureau back in the early 80s limited cars to speedometers to 85 miles per hour. I believe due to the fuel crisis, they didn't want people going that fast. You can get an aftermarket speedometer if you really want to know when you're hitting that magical 88 miles per hour. As for me, I'll probably just obey the speed limit. But if I do decide that I can't help myself, there are obviously other ways to know how fast you're going, GPS or apps on your phone, that kind of thing. One of the first things that surprised me about the DeLorean was that there is no power steering and no power brakes. So it feels pretty heavy when you're steering and braking, and having to brake fast can be a little bit disconcerting. The car weighs about 2,700 pounds. The stainless steel, while beautiful and it ages really well, it's also kind of heavy. And the Peugeot, Renault, Volvo engine in the back only generates about 200 horsepower. I do think, though, that might play a part in why the DeLorean is pretty affordable to insure. If you've been thinking about a DeLorean, one thing you don't have to worry about is high insurance costs. This DeLorean cost me $29,000, and it cost me less to insure than my Nissan Murano, which cost $10,000, and is a 2009. So by probably a couple $100 per 6 months. So insurance in the DeLorean is totally affordable compared to maybe other sports cars that have a little bit higher performance and might be tempting people to do more dangerous things. The DeLorean, by virtue of not having a whole ton of pickup, does eliminate that temptation to really floor it and do that sort of potentially dangerous type driving behavior. It does, however, tempt you a little bit in the corners, and so we're gonna check this one out here. I'm doing about 55. I'm not gonna push it too bad. Do feel a little bit of pull. Here it's 20 miles recommended. We're doing about 58 as we come into this corner. 60. Gonna slow down a little bit. Oh, 50. This one's particularly tight. 45. All right. Whew. So that's the fun in the DeLorean. Really feels level. Really feels like it's got a lot of grip as you go into those corners. Does get hot in this car. One of the things that the DeLorean Midwest shop was adamant about before I took possession of the car, I bought it through them on consignment, was that the AC be working at its maximum strength, because the only part of the window that goes down is this little portion here called the toll booth window, because it's only about good for paying at the toll booth. So you don't get a whole lot of air through that. I found the vents in the door have a hard time making that corner, so they don't cool you off very much. So about all you got are these two vents in the middle. So with AC and full blast, this summer drove down to the DeLorean conference in Springfield, Illinois, and at about 90 degrees on the freeway, I wasn't totally comfortable. I was okay. I wasn't sweating to death, but it was a little bit unpleasant. I don't know how much you can see with Google Glass here, but here in the center console is where your controls are for your power windows and the rear defrost. Rear defrost, turns out it wasn't really necessary because the engine is in the rear. That pretty much defrosts the window. Plus, this isn't necessarily a car you really want to be driving in terribly cold weather, particularly if there's salt, because while the panels are stainless steel and those won't rust, the frame is steel, and that can rust badly. So a few DeLoreans were made, very few from what I understand, with stainless steel frames, which have been ideal. But for the rest of us, we just don't drive them in winter, particularly in places where there's salt. Also, rear-wheel drive, make it a little less fun. Here comes some more corners. We're doing just over 55 here. Not too bad. Not pushing it too much. It does get a little tighter here. And again, I'd rather err on the side of not totaling my DeLorean. So if you're thinking I'm kind of wussing out, you're right. when you get a DeLorean, you can do what you want with it. One of the other kind of weird things about the DeLorean is the horn. As you can see, there's no horn here. The horn is actually on the end of the turn signal indicator. I don't know how well you can hear that. Not the most masculine of horns, I'm afraid. That was kind of funny. Plus, it takes a moment to think about, you know, when you want to honk the horn, it's usually something you need to do quickly. And so already when I've wanted to go honk the horn, I've had to tell myself, no, it's on the end of the turn signal indicator. And by that point, the moment had passed. So, plus, you know, with that somewhat timid sound of the horn, it maybe doesn't communicate your emotions as effectively as one might wish. I'm about 6'4.5", and as you can see, I've got a little bit of space here, about maybe an inch or so. John DeLorean was 6'4", from what I understand, and he wanted to build a sports car that a tall person could fit into, which is one of the reasons I fell in love with the DeLorean. If you're 6'5", you'll probably just barely fit. I mean, if I really sit up, I can hit the ceiling. If you're much taller than 6'5", I would definitely recommend sitting in a DeLorean before you commit to buying one. I put a $1,000 deposit on this car without ever having sat in one, and so I was a little bit anxious when I first got into it, but it's turned out to be fine. If you're shorter than 6'4", you're only going to be more comfortable, and the passenger seat is really quite comfortable for people of more normal height. Well, I hope you enjoyed this first-person drive in the DeLorean. I'm going to be taking this car 3,700 miles back to my home in Fairbanks, Alaska in June of 2017. And I'm going to be starting an Indiegogo campaign here shortly, so I hope that you'll check that out and support me in this project, because I'd love for you to be a part of it with me. Thanks so much for watching this video. I'm Rob Prince, professor in the journalism department at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and thanks a lot.